So I bought this boat sight unseen off the internet. It's actually gone surprisingly well. So I wanted to show you guys the full process on how I bought it, what I learned about it online, and then the auction bidding process right through to getting delivered and what I found in it and all that stuff. So here it is, the entire backstory on how I bought this boat. What's going on, guys? Matt Kelly here. Just a quick disclaimer before you start watching this video. This one is about 30 plus minutes of me talking. It's the process of sourcing the boat, winning the auction, getting it delivered and everything that came with it. If there's no boating, there's no fishing in this video, so if that's the stuff you're looking for, click on one of my other videos. But if you want to see the full auction process, this is the one for you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys soon. Alright, so I want to show you how these auctions work. And this is not to say that this is the right way to do it. I actually don't know what I'm doing. I've taught myself this, and I feel like it's a pretty good process, and it's worked for me. I've bought quite a few things through some of these online auction houses, and it's worked. So to start with, what I thought I would show you is I actually found this boat for the first time on Lloyds Auctions, but when I was doing some research, I found that the owner had also listed it on boatsales.com.au. Now, this is probably the equivalent of your Craigslist or your Gumtrees or your Facebook marketplaces. It's an online marketplace for people to list and sell boats. In this case, so this is the exact boat that I found on Lloyds Auctions, but he had a price listed. It's now not available because I've now got it, but this was listed here for 33,000 Australian dollars, which to me sounded about right. And certainly, I think if you'd listed it on Facebook Marketplace in some of the groups, the groups for this type of boat, I think you would have sold this boat for probably 35 to 37 very quickly. The secondhand market has gone nuts. COVID has made boats go insane in Australia. New boats are impossible to get with really long lead times. You can walk into a dealer and get a boat, obviously, but anything to your specifications takes a really long time. And second-hand market, as a result of that, has absolutely boomed. It's unbelievable. So with that, I feel like you could have gotten, say, 35, probably fairly easily if you advertised for it in the right place. He had it. The only places I found it was on boat sales and then on Lloyds Auctions. So here it was listed for $33,000. As you scroll down, there's a bunch of photos. Now it doesn't show them. It just shows because it's not available. It only shows you that one photo, but that's fine. Pretty good description. So detailed description, references the fact that it's got low 188 hours, which is the same as what I noticed on Lloyds Auctions, had the same thing, and pretty much the same description on both sites. So listed the sounder, the dual batteries, the Bluetooth stereo with speakers, and so on. So the whole list of features about the boat. So I knew basically in my head, I knew the boat was for sale. I knew he'd tried to sell it himself, and he's gone to the auctions, and I knew that he wanted 33,000 Australian dollars. Now, obviously, everyone is negotiable, but he does mention here, please no lowball offers, which is interesting because I feel like the auctions often have a connotation that they're low value. So people are looking for a bargain, and they're not going to pay above market price for anything. And so guys, an interesting choice to go to the auctions. The one thing I will mention that is cool is on boat sales, it pulls in all the information about the boat from the manufacturer. So if you go to specifications, it actually gives you all of the measurements and features that are attached to this boat, which I will actually now use when I go to register it, but more on that shortly. So I've done my research. I found out about the boat. Lloyds Auctions is where I found it. So if I go to Lloyds Auctions, I can go to current auctions, and what it will do is it will give me automotive, trucks and marine, and then I can filter here down to boats, marine and aircraft, which is their categories. And for Lloyds, these are the current auctions that are live in market. Now, first thing you'll say or think to yourself is, well, there are some bargains here right now. And there is. 26-foot Bertram, this is like basically the smallest flybridge cruiser that you can get in Australia, or very similar, or very close to it. 2 days and 18 hours to go, $13,000 is the current bid. Now, it is 1989. I don't know anything about... I'm not a boat salesperson by any stretch of the imagination, but I would imagine that the right person getting their hands on this is probably a pretty good deal. But again, sight unseen. So I haven't gone and seen this. I believe you can go and inspect them and see what the deal is. As you scroll down, they usually have pretty meaningful descriptions. All I really care about here, all I trust here is the year, the boat, the engine and the engine hours. Because if you can get that sort of information, that gives you a pretty good indication of where you're playing. So this one here says engine hours, 712 on port, 712 on starboard. That suggests that they're both there from original. They haven't replaced one of them because the hours would be a lot smaller on one than the other. Again, just good general information. there will be people who will say you've got to go and get it surveyed, you should have someone look at it, you should go look at it in person. I agree with all of those things. I don't know if you can get them surveyed in these auctions. I don't know if you can actually have someone go and do substantial inspections outside of yourself. But there's typically some pretty good information on these sites. Recently restored, blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. Again, I'm not getting paid by these guys. In fact, I'm to the point where I'm going to show you some other sites as well. I have used Lloyds many times, but there's other sites. So this one here's Pickles. Again, I'm only going to focus on Australia. I apologise if you're overseas. You'll find they're probably very similar sites everywhere. So Pickles is very similar. So you go to boats, and then again, these could be councils or governments. Often, if you see the same boat multiple times, the same type of boat multiple times, it will be. These ones here are auctions that are proposed. These are auctions in the future. So this one is on the 11th that it starts. It's the 6th today. So you can go through and basically scroll through and do your research. Another good example is Grays. So Grays are not famous for boats specifically, although they certainly sell them. But you can buy just about anything on Grays Auctions. But what they do that I really like is they actually say if there's a reserve. So in this case, they say reserve not met. Lloyds don't say that whether or not there is a reserve in the site, but you can kind of assume that unless it says it's unreserved or there is no reserve, you can kind of assume that there will be a reserve attached to it. So these are quite handy because you sort of know how close, using this little scale, each one of these are and how many bids they have right from the outset. So that one there's got 62 bids at $10,000. It's a 2021 model. Really, that actually looks like it would be a good buy. I don't know if it's got a motor. It doesn't have a motor, so that's a brand new boat though. So if that closes in 2.5 days, 2 days and 5 hours. If that sells for under 20 grand, that's a crazy bargain for whoever got that, which is pretty cool, pretty interesting. I just want to show you. I'll talk about Lloyds because I know it really, really well. So, in this case, if you wanted to bid, you'd register for an account. So you can see here that I'm currently logged in, and then you'll see that the amount of time remaining. Here, you can do a few things. You can add in your max bid. You should always note that almost every site will have a buyer's premium. So this is an additional fee that you've got to pay on top of it, which is effectively the fees that the auction house charges. So really, you're not actually looking at the max bid number. You're looking at the estimated maximum commitment. That's the number that matters for you. So here, if I said I was willing to pay up to $25,000 for this boat, what I would do is I would enter in $25,000, and that would tell me that my maximum commitment is $26,800 with the buyer's premium, so I could lower that down to get it under 25 if that was my max. But what happens is, and this is what's really cool, is it won't actually bid me to 25. It'll just bid me incrementally up from the current bid. So it'll probably bid me to 14 grand. And if someone else bid, I would automatically bid on top of them. Now, where this becomes really useful is in the dying seconds of an auction. So these guys will typically let it run. It'll stay low right up until maybe an hour before the auction, maybe less. And that's when people will come in and start going hard for something that they want. So you can't really look at something 3 days out and say, oh, that's a really great price, because it's going to increase. In my experience, bidding on a few things, it always increases. So I always wait until literally the dying seconds, and then I'll come in with the absolute max I'm willing to pay, or the lowest amount, the maximum amount that I'm happy to go to that amount, but I'll be disappointed if I lost it for less than that, if that makes sense. So basically, in this case, I would come in probably in the last 20 seconds of the auction, and I would type in 25,000, even if it was at say it was at 20, I would put in 25,000, because I know that other people are going to try and bid it up as well. So I want to make sure that I'm there at the top at the very end. So again, I don't know if this is the best way. It's in my experience, it's how I've done it, and it's worked well for me. So that's basically how it works. So you just enter in that number, you hit bid up to. If I hit that number right now, it would register a bid. So I've got to be careful not to hit that. And I'll have a look at some of the other boats there, just so that you guys can see what they have. What's that? Stingray, 20 grand. That's a big boat there. Sea-Doo Speedstar. There's heaps here. Haynes Signature. That's Deluxe Bow Rider, so that could be good. Yeah, this one here looks nice. Now, something that is important to note is you can't really get a great picture from a few photos, and that's something to keep in mind. There's some staining on the carpet. I'd want to see a boat like that before I bought it, but again, that's just my gut feel. It's a kind of boat that, you never know what could be wrong with it, so it's worth having a look. There's a lot to go wrong in a boat that size. Sea-Doo Speedstar, that's pretty cool. It's not my style, but I think it's a pretty cool boat. Pretty dirty inside, so there's some questions you could probably ask yourself about where it's come from. Big tears in the seat. Yeah, I'd be questionable on that one. But again, if the price was really cost effective, then that's worth looking at. It's got no hour meter, so you don't know how it's a 2007. It could have a lot of hours on it. If you knew what you were doing and you could do the work on it, definitely worth looking at. But otherwise, maybe not. We'll look at this Haynes bow rider as well. Haynes signature. Cool boat. Older motor, which is fine. No, it looks okay. It looks like it needs a good tidy up. But again, wouldn't be a bad. There you go, moss growing on the carpet. Again, they're just signs I would look at as potential warning flags. But that's the process. That's the process you go through. So for the narrative on how I bought mine. So obviously I saw this. I knew the guy wanted about 30. My gut feel was his reserve would be about 33. So I went into the auction when it was at about $18,000 an hour beforehand, and I just watched it for that next half hour. I went in and put in my absolute maximum bid, which was $27,000. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but in this case, I knew that boat was easily worth the 33, and it was probably worth a fair bit more than that. I actually feel like if you put that boat in the right Facebook group, listed on Marketplace, you'd sell it for 35 grand. So I put in my number, and I ended up winning the auction at 24,000. So I won the auction under reserve. His reserve was 33. I won it at 24. Where this gets kind of interesting is the auction ends and it basically just says pending. You were the top bidder, but you don't know what the reserve was. And then you get a phone call, and that phone call comes, within a couple of hours, and it's someone at Lloyds in this case, and that's when the negotiation starts. So they'll give you an indication of what the reserve was or how close you were, and give you an opportunity to either agree to the reserve or make an offer, and they'll go back and forth between you and the seller. For me personally, I find that a lot nicer than going to someone's house and negotiating hard. That's not fun for me. I know for many people it is fun. It's definitely not for me. So I let that person do the heavy lifting. So I went up a little bit. So I went up to 26. There was a lot of back and forth after that with the seller, and ultimately the seller agreed to my final price, which was very close to that, and that's what I got it for. So I'm super happy with what I paid. It was about as much as I was willing to pay, but that worked out really well for me. And the team at Lloyds were amazing to work with, so that was really cool. What's interesting, though, is in lockdown right now. So we're in lockdown. We're actually not allowed to leave our houses outside for essential purposes. The boat was located about an hour a drive away from me. I think I could technically have gone and gotten it, but I thought, you know what? The one thing about the auctions is they come unregistered. Didn't want to muck around with that. I just said, hey, do you guys have a freight partner? They organised the delivery completely. So you pay a few $100, which is annoying, but I did not mind at all. And 2 days later, the boat was sitting outside my house, so they came and delivered it to me, which was really cool. So the boat arrived. Again, I had not seen it in person. All I'd seen was the photos on boat sales, the photos on Lloyds, and then a few videos of similar boats on YouTube, just so I get an indication of the size, the scale, the speed, all that kind of stuff. So you don't know too much. All in all, I think I got pretty lucky, but the real test is what actually arrives on your front door. So let's jump outside and have a look at the boat. Obviously, having not seen it, I didn't know anything. I literally did not know anything. Now, straight off the bat, I started to look around at when it arrived, what was the condition like? What was I looking at? In the trailer, there's a few little things that I picked up that you would not pick up in photos. So this is a lock that I put on myself, so that's all good. The lights worked, which is cool. There's a combination lock here, which I obviously don't know the code for, so that'll have to ultimately get probably cut off, or I'll have to work something out for that. The condition of everything else looks actually pretty good. There's rust around, but it's not bad. Everything is really functional. The trailer itself looks to be in pretty good shape. The jockey wheel's seen better days. You can tell it's a bit of rust in there, but it works totally fine. As you go around, the trailer itself, all really good condition. So that's promising, right? It got driven here, so it's not like it wasn't able to be driven. So that's good. In terms of the boat itself, now, let's be honest. When you buy a sight unseen, you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. You really don't. You can get a pretty good lens from the photos, but when I look at the photos, it looked really, really good. When you get up close, you start to see, right, why was it such a good deal? Why was it such a good price? Well, it's actually not imperfect. It was off the auctions, which you're going to get it cheaper by default, but That's a scratch out of the decal, so there's a few scratches around. On the rub rail, there's some scratches through that top coat. Some really light scratching here. I actually think some of that might actually come out, but there is scratching there. The hull itself structurally looks completely sound. There's no cracked welds, there's no issues anywhere that I could see. It looks really, really solid. I haven't investigated it at all. It arrived literally yesterday, so I don't know much yet. But just as far as like what you could expect, some little nicks out of the paint job. But again, it's in pretty good shape given the price and all things considered. This is the worst bit of damage I've found on the entire boat. Right here. This is a chip out of just the plate alloy right there, which is annoying, and I will probably actually fix that myself with some kind of filler and paint just to do a touch up myself, just because I don't like it, although it's obviously not leaking water or anything by any means. This is the part that's high risk, obviously. When you're buying sight unseen, you have no idea what the motor's going to be like. Interestingly, the dealer actually said in the ad, starts and runs. Now, sorry, the auction house. Now, the auction houses don't typically test it, and they won't give you any warranty at all. Absolutely no warranty. So I actually have no certainty whether it does start or run, but they did say it starts and runs, which means that they obviously had it running at their lot at some point, because they wouldn't say it if they didn't. And they definitely wouldn't take a seller's word for it. So I still haven't started it, so that's got to happen. But if you're seeing this video, it means it runs at some point, because this video is coming out after the reveal video. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully it worked. Everything else, though, you sort of go around the boat and you're like, okay, well, the biggest observation is it's actually really dirty. It looks all right, probably from a distance, but as you get close, there's a lot of dust and dirt around the boat. This cover is actually, again, looks all right from a distance, but is very dusty. But as I say, all things considered, when you think about the price and the value for money component, if you're willing to take some risk, then and you know I'm interested in cleaning it up, that's fun for me, then it's a pretty good deal. Or certainly from the outside it looks good. Let's have a look inside. All right, so the biggest observations inside the boat was that it was actually quite dirty and dusty, so I haven't vacuumed this yet. The carpet feels dusty. There is leaves and stuff in it. In the side pockets, they were absolutely full of stuff. So that's the other thing that was really interesting, was obviously no one had put the time in to come in and empty out their original stuff from it. So I basically got it in a state that it was used by someone else, which is really, really quite useful when you're buying a boat, because there's a whole bunch of things that you need, right? You need safety gear. You could easily spend a couple of $1,000s on stuff when you're getting the boat. So I'll show you all that in a second, all the stuff that arrived with it, because that's actually pretty interesting. As far as the layout, there's a lot you have to learn. So I had no idea. Obviously, there's some labelled switches here. There's also a bunch of switches that I have no idea what they did. So it took a lot of experimenting. Interior lights, and I found out, obviously, last night, LED strip lighting around the whole boat. That's really cool. This one here it's actually had a 100-litre fresh water tank added and a deck wash. So that's got a water pump, which is attached to that one. You've got blue underwater lights on the transom there. You've got two big flood lights on the top of the rocket launchers mounted above the bimini. And then obviously nav lights, anchor lights. It's got a bait tank, which is over there. And that's the bait tank pump, bilge pump. And it's actually got a full stereo as well. So again, you've really got to get in and just start playing with things when you buy a boat in this situation, because it's not like you've got an expert, or I don't even know who the owner was, or I do now, but only because they left some paperwork in here. But they didn't have to do that, right? So I technically know nothing about them, which does create a bit of a headache when you're trying to work out, right, how does all this stuff work? And usually someone would be there to talk you through it or show you it, or you could actually call someone. I couldn't do any of that. So that is one of the downsides. Like I say, it was full of stuff. Down there in the side there, and in the side down here, these absolutely full. I found bags of stuff under the seat. There's a cover that was on the floor just here. Something that I thought was really cool in this case was the original owner had kept all of the paperwork for everything. So the sounder, the deck wash, all the pumps, anything they had added aftermarket, they had kept in a plastic sleeve in the glove box. That makes it really useful because you can start to work out what we've got. There's an EPIRB and a fire extinguisher. Having those and knowing expiry dates, when they were purchased, where they were purchased from, again, quite nice to have. He didn't have to include those, and I came into it expecting that I wouldn't get any paperwork at all, even for the engine. In the flip side, I actually got all of that. So that's really useful and really cool, but you've got to go into it expecting you're going to know nothing about the boat, you're not going to know how it's been wired up or how it works, and you're not going to get any paperwork. That's what you're going to assume in this case. And really, there's no one you can call. So if you don't know what you're doing yourself, you have to then get an expert to come in and help you work it all out. So I've had the benefit of some paperwork, which is good, a bit of working it out myself, but it's all been pretty self-explanatory so far, so I've gotten pretty lucky. So like I say, there's heaps of stuff around here, but as you come forward, what I haven't yet gone through is what's under the bow rider section. So the cool thing about bow rider is obviously that these all come out, right? So seat cushion comes out. This middle section comes out, which you can use as a fishing platform, which is good. All right, now I don't know if he's actually included safety gear. I have not opened these yet, but let's get in and have a look. All right, nothing in this front section, but that is a huge amount of storage. A huge amount. It does have an anchor well up here, which is handy as, but I can imagine that you might use this as your anchor well. If you didn't have that, I will use this space for sure. That's massive. Oh, interesting. So this one here has got... Okay, so that's where my speakers are mounted. So I've got one speaker there. I've obviously got one on the other side as well for the stereo. But this is what looks like a mega floodlight. I have no idea if this is worth much. Cigarette lighter, that's pretty cool. I'm definitely going to play with that and see if I can get it to work. That's really interesting. I don't think there's anything else in there. No, nothing else in there. However, that does have a flat floor, so again, that would be useful for storage for stuff. Bingo. So in here, there's bags. So I mean it legitimately when I say I have got no idea what's inside here. But I'll take all this out of the boat and we're about to find out. Alright, here's everything that came in the boat. So there's an anchor in the front of the boat. There was also a sand anchor in the back of the boat with rope, no chain on it. So obviously that was used as secondary, which is fine. It's actually quite a good sized anchor, and it looks to be in quite good condition. 2 fenders, which, sorry that light is terrible, which are in sleeves, which are actually again in really good condition. There was a bag here. I'm not sure what that was used for. That was the cover for the outside of the boat, so a complete cover that goes over the canopy and everything, which is pretty cool. This is where you start to find some things that you may or may not keep. So WD-40, always handy. We'd probably keep that in the garage. It's almost empty. Insect repellent, more insect repellent. There's also 2 tubes of sunscreen. This one here is interesting. Oh, there you go. In a pandemic, nothing more useful than that. A light that was obviously attached, mounted in the boat somewhere. At some point, I'm going to test it and see if it works, because it could be quite useful. Again, not something I'm using right now. In case your battery runs out, you can still start your motor. So there's a little portable pull cord, which is cool. This was sitting inside 2 bags, or 2 pillowcases there almost are. I believe this was, given there's some corrosion on there, I believe this was originally on the boat or on a different boat, and they've left it there as a spare in case of emergency. That's my gut feel. It's slightly bigger than the one on the boat, so that's quite interesting. Some rope and some straps, which are cool. These are Railblazer style cup holders. So there was 2 of those, and then there's one here with suction mounts as well. There's the floodlight we got, 2 collapsible oars, and a big pole for navigating your way to or from a jetty or another boat. And then these are what we just found just now. That's one of the bags. Inside that bag, safety gear. So it has a fire blanket, a V-sheet, flares, and a torch. The flares expiry is the 6th, 2023. So we've got a couple of years in those, which is pretty cool. I've got fresh flares as well, but that's cool. I would probably just keep them in the boat for safety. And finally, this one here is a toolbox. And there is a stack of tools in here. Some that I don't quite understand what they were needed in the boat for. But hooks, nails, hammer. It feels pretty cheap and not great quality. But a whole bunch of that would be very useful. And yeah, some zip ties. These look like fairly cheap, super cheap auto style tools. But useful to have nevertheless. You definitely would rather have it than not have it. It's a knife, tape measure. So I reckon this was the guy's complete toolkit. That's what I would imagine. Spanners. So yeah. The big learning is you actually don't know what you're going to get. You really don't. If you're buying it sight unseen in an auction, it's likely to have some stuff in it. There is a chance that the original people have taken everything out of it. That's very, very possible and almost, I would almost say likely. However, in this case, it was full of stuff, and it's all the stuff that you actually need to go out. Now, interestingly, the one thing it doesn't have is life jackets, which is something that I actually thought probably would be in there, certainly stowed up the top. So the fact that they're not there isn't, I'm not disappointed, but it's just something that I thought might be there. Everything else, there's a lot of random stuff. But I guess it's something to just note that while you're gonna get something that you've got to almost assume is an empty shell, you have no idea what the condition is, you have no idea how it runs, you definitely couldn't water test it in an auction like what I did. Maybe in different parts of the world or whatever, you might be able to test it, start it up and run it, or have someone else do an inspection on it for you before the auction, but I don't think that's the case. Mostly it's no warranty. You can go and do an inspection or do a video call inspection, but really you're not going to know too much to actually get it in your hands. At least that was my experience. For me, turned out great. The boat is awesome, the engine is awesome, came with some gear that I will use, some I'll definitely throw out in the bin, but that's something that I think makes this kind of fun and interesting, right? It's if you can get a good deal, it's pretty low risk, and again, it all comes down to the price you pay. I'd sort of assumed that, you know, if I have to put a couple of grand into the motor, it's still a great deal for me and it's still the right boat for me, so that made it worthwhile. But if I didn't have that budget set aside to do that, I would not have bought through the auctions like this. To me, that would have been too high risk. So that's my experience. I hope you guys got value out of this. If you did, leave a like, give us a comment, let me know what you think. I would love to know what your experience is like doing something similar to this. If you've done this in your own city or in a different country and have got an alternative experience, that would be really, really cool. So hope this was useful or interesting, and yeah, cheers, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.